Nice to see you, CUPE. I am super excited to be here with you today, and thank you to President Hancock and Secretary Treasurer Fleury for the invitation to be with you, and to your entire National Executive Board. It is quite an honor. You know, my union family in the U.S. thanks Canada for the light you continue to shine and the leadership examples you've set. From fighters like Helen Armstrong, who won a minimum wage for the women of Manitoba in 1921, 10 years before men, and lit the fire in women to stand up during the Winnipeg General Strike that inspired courageous Canadians like Tommy Douglas, who spent his life fighting like hell for workers and demanded health care as a human right. We're still trying to follow you on that one, Canada. To your convention today, setting an equality statement at the heart of your code of conduct in 2007, 10 years before the U.S. labor movement took a similar stand. Our friends in the North give us hope and vision. And the truth is, we are going to fight like hell against fascism to save workers' rights, democracy in the U.S., but just in case, leave a little space for us up here, will ya? All my friends wanted me to ask you that. So my union, the Association of Flight Attendants with 50,000 members at 20 airlines, was first formed to beat back incredible discrimination that ranged from quitting at age 30 or stepping on a weight scale until 1993. We even fought for men to have the same rights on the job as women. You're welcome, guys. And we're at the forefront of LGBTQ+ rights because it doesn't matter who you love. It only matters that you love. That's the spirit that led flight attendants to declare we wouldn't work flights that facilitated the administration's evil policy of family separations. And it's the spirit that mobilized action against ICE detention of one of our members who was a dreamer, winning her release within 18 hours of coming to our attention. In my first week on the job, a 35-year flight attendant pulled me aside, and after I watched her in a little scuffle with a supervisor where she won, and she said, "Listen, management thinks of us as their wives or their mistresses, and in either case, they hold us in contempt. Your only place of worth is with your fellow flying partners, and if we stick together, there's nothing we can't do." If we stick together, there's nothing we can't do. Now, we have the right to fight together because of our union. And so I want to hear a little pride in your union right now. So on the count of 3, I want you to stand up and yell out as loud as you can, your union local. 1, 2, 3. All right, there's some union pride. Now, our rights did not materialize out of the goodwill of corporations. Our rights were hard-won. In the midst of the fight for the 8-hour day, people died in Winnipeg on Bloody Saturday, and 4 union men were framed for the Haymarket Massacre and hanged by the state of Illinois. 143 garment workers burned alive or jumped to their death on the streets of Manhattan in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire because the bosses didn't want them to take any breaks. 20 were shot or burned alive, including women and children, when miners in Ludlow, Colorado were striking to gain the rights at work that were already offered under the law and for the right to form their union. A group of auto workers, including Walter Reuther, were brutally beaten by company thugs when fighting for a raise and a shorter workday. And today, this union is on the picket line again with 50,000 auto workers in their 3rd week on a strike for some of the same basic rights the Reuther brothers and their union won 70 years ago. 30 years ago this summer, our CWA brother, Jerry Horgan, was struck and killed while on the picket line at NYNEX strike while fighting for health care. Each of these tragedies were horrific, but they were also the driving force in the workers' hearts to fight for change and to make our friends and our families ensure that they did not die in vain. Corporate thieves today don't turn on us with guns and clubs and knives. They inject their money into our politics. They stack the courts and buy the agenda. They try to strip us of our rights through court decisions, massive trade deals, executive orders, or the refusal to implement gains like the 10 hours rest U.S. flight attendants won under the law last year, but is still not implemented because this administration won't force the airlines to do it. Boardrooms in Wall Street like to say the business definition of our airlines, mainline, regional, ultra-low cost, defines the value of our work as aviation's first responders. It is another form of misclassification of workers, but the results are just the same as in other industries. People living in poverty, having to choose between paying rent or the electric bill with no safety net in the event the U.S. healthcare system fails them if they get sick. The outsourcing, contracting, understaffing, every single industry is playing the same game. This is not his fight, or her fight, or their fight. This is our fight, CUPE. Now, since 1978, executive pay has risen 940%, while worker compensation has risen only 12% in that same period. These conditions are unsustainable, and people are ready to fight. The labor movement is rising more than ever. A supermajority of people want to form unions. We have the answers, and we have to give it to them. We have to open our arms wide to invite everyone to join our unions and join this fight. Now, I want to summon in your mind's eyes the faces of the people who walked the picket lines in the last couple of years, not even all union members themselves. Picture them. West Virginia's teachers and their mine worker parents and grandparents, grocery workers, hotel workers, Google engineers, Uber drivers, and Amazon workers, transit workers in New England, and Wayfair workers in Boston protesting their company's collaboration with ICE, and coal miners in Kentucky who occupied the tracks, blocking the coal trains to demand what they were owed. There are no illegal strikes. There are only unsuccessful ones. But we know as a labor movement, we are never one and done. Our unions are the structure that lasts, and we need to build our unions like never before. Solidarity is a force stronger than gravity, and I know solidarity firsthand because I have lived it. As a brand new flight attendant at United Airlines, the company failed to pay me. With zero balance in my bank account, I had no idea how I would even eat that day. I went down into the airline office to ask why I hadn't been paid and what was going on. They had no answers for me. And for the first time, I felt like I was just a number in an HR file. The tears started to roll when I felt a tap on my shoulder that changed everything. Standing before me was someone who looked just like me. I'd never seen her before, but she was holding her checkbook and asking me how to spell my name. She handed me a check for $800, and she said, "Number one, you go take care of yourself. And number two, you call our union." I did call our union. I did call our union, and I had my paycheck the next day. But that's when I learned the power of being a part of our union. They fought for me in a way that I could have never fought for myself alone. And I also learned that in our union, we are never alone. When management tries to control us, we need to remember one thing. We work, they don't. We know which side we're on your side. We've got your back. Now, people think power is a limited resource, but using power builds power. And once workers get a taste of our power, we will not settle for a bad deal, and we won't stand by while someone else gets screwed either. That's what happened during the US government shutdown. Workers, real people, were in crisis. No money to pay for rent, for childcare, or even a tank of gas to get back and forth to work. The federal worker stretching insulin through the night and wondering if she will wake up in the morning. The TSA officer in her third trimester with no uncertainty for her unborn child. the union vet advocate who was attacked by the administration for speaking truth about the crisis it created for 250,000 veterans with more instability and the likelihood of suicide. The air traffic controller who whispered to his union leader, "I just don't know how long I can hang on." Our TSA brother, Robert Henry in Orlando, who took his life by jumping 8 floors to his death in the middle of the security checkpoint. To the public, federal workers were no longer nameless, faceless bureaucrats. The stories made them human to the public. And for flight attendants, aviation security isn't academic, it's life and death. I frequently worked United Flight 175, the plane you can picture hitting the South Tower of the World Trade Center, because that's the image captured from so many angles after American Flight 11 struck the North Tower 17 minutes earlier. It could have been me on that flight, but instead it was my friends. It was Amy and Michael and Robert, Catherine, Al, Alicia, Amy, Jesus, and Marianne. Even if it hadn't led to tragedy, this shutdown, any breakdown in the system means flight attendants aren't flying. As hourly workers, when we don't fly, we can't pay our rent. It was all on the line. And many people wanted federal workers with no right to strike and the threat of PATCO-style federal indictments hanging over their heads to walk off the job and end the shutdown. But that would have played right into the hands of the politicians who wanted to push us into this senseless shutdown in the first place, an excuse to privatize major pieces of government because it wouldn't work. When 2 million people were locked out or being forced to come to work without pay, and the rest of us were going to work in increasingly unsafe conditions, the question became, what is the labor movement waiting for? Federal sector workers needed us to have their back, and the truth is, if they can't do their jobs, we can't do ours. We are connected as workers. We had to urgently define what was at stake and what leverage we had to fix it. Flight attendants made clear our rights allowed us to refuse to work unsafe conditions, and we made clear we were going to exercise those rights. We called for labor to talk about a general strike, but what that did was make clear who had the power. When it seemed that there was no answer and no end in sight, labor led the way. The strike is our tactic, but solidarity is our power. The shutdown ended not so much because of few grounded flights in LaGuardia, but because those 10 air traffic controllers who couldn't safely do their jobs any longer signaled a much more powerful threat to those with all the money and all the control. Labor was rising, and the very last thing they could allow us to do is taste our power. We would have unraveled the whole thing. So we have a chance in this moment to build a labor movement for today, one founded in mutual respect and dignity, a future with good union jobs and a clean planet where our great-grandchildren can rise even higher than we can dream. And our lives and well-being are completely tied together with workers in Mexico, China, and Germany, yet politicians in every country seek to divide us, pit us against each other. Now, aviation is a symbol of freedom around the world. As aviation's foremost ambassadors, flight attendants have a unique voice in our society and role in this promotion of our core values, including freedom of movement and expression. Those values are threatened by prosecution of peaceful protesters in Hong Kong right now, protesting to protect their freedom to protest, freedom to join trade unions, and freedom to vote. Now, China is banning crew members who participated in these protests from working flights to mainland China, ending their careers. And Cathay Pacific and Dragonair flight attendants are being fired, and pilots as well, a few at a time, because they hope that workers won't put up a fight and they won't think they're coming for them if they keep their head down. I want to commend David Chung for the fight that he is taking on right here in Vancouver at Local 4088, and we want you to know we have your back. Now, we stand with our aviation sisters and brothers working through nonviolent protest and direct action to stop regressive laws in Hong Kong, and we stand against the threat to their jobs, their safety, and their freedom. And I encourage everyone here to take up this issue and send a loud and clear message that workers have the right to assemble in peaceful protest in every nation as we rise up and fight back for a just, equitable future. Part of our task is to build a labor movement that sees itself truly as a labor movement, not just a collection of separate unions, but a movement that is big enough and broad enough to lift up everyone who works. Because just as no individual worker can stand alone, no individual union, no matter how big, can stand alone either, or can survive on its own for long. We cannot be a movement of a handful of workers here and there, or a movement that lives off of our political skills. We also cannot succumb to the temptation of company unionism, of turning to employers as the outsourced HR solution. We must build a powerful, democratic labor movement built on solidarity and power in the workplace, a labor movement that is ready to work together with business to build back our world, but whose core purpose is to make sure that whether business chooses to work with us or not, working people will get our fair share of the wealth we create. Now, the good news is that every time we fight, we get stronger. And there's no shortage of fights for labor. But it has to start in the workplace. It has to start in real people's lives every day. If we want to build power for our movement and for working people, start in the workplace, and the politics will follow. But unless you've forgotten, I live in a country where Donald Trump is president, where we take refugees from persecution and violence and put them in cages, where we separate mothers from children, where our president makes excuses for Nazis and attacks local union leaders, gives trillions to corporations, and threatens to take health care away from the poor. And let me tell you, people like Donald Trump have always tried to woo working people. And after a generation of failing wages, of lost pensions and bad trade deals, a lot of people were open to trying anything, at least at first. But now we can call him and his buddies for what they are: frauds, con men, people who with one hand shake their fist at imagined enemies and with the other hand pick your pocket. People are hurting and looking for answers for leadership. I learned the hard way at the bargaining table and with some of the world's most powerful corporations, stacked with even the power of the bankruptcy court, that the solidarity and courage of working people is the greatest force for good in human history. And with our unions, we don't have to wait for the next election to seek change. The power of solidarity gets results right away. Change comes fast when the risk becomes too great for those in power, and power shifts to the people when we act in unity. So let's use it. Let's spread the word that the labor movement belongs to all working people. Women, people of color, young people, join unions and run unions. We need your vision, your passion, your creativity, your leadership. Spread the word that unions are for everyone. If you're done with poverty, build your union. If you want affordable housing, build your union. If you want to stop attacks on transit workers with accountability, build your union. If you want to close the dangerous safety loopholes and self-regulation of companies like Boeing, build your union. If you're sick and tired of pension defaults for Main Street and stock buybacks for Wall Street, build your union. If you want a green economy that saves our planet and creates good union jobs, build your union. If you want for yourself what you're willing to want for somebody else, even if they are different from you, build your union. And if you just want to tell the boss to kiss your ass, build your union. And finally, look at the people all around you, because there is a lot of power in this room. Look at the people all around you and tell everyone around you, I've got your back. I've got your back. Come on, CUPE, stand up, fight back. I've got your back. I've got your back. I've got your back. I've got your back. Have a great convention. Thank you.